Today, we have a special one. ESPN senior insider Mr. Adam Schefter joins the show. Let's roll.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Here we are, Friday afternoon. Like I said, we have a really special show today. ESPN senior insider Mr. Adam Schefter joins the show. Adam, how are you doing today?
Hello, Connor. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming on as we know you're very busy, but you ready to get right into it?
If you are.
So you recently had the chance to speak with Mike Williams on your podcast, and he said, quote, he'll do anything it takes to win a Super Bowl. And I think a lot of players on this Jets team have a similar mindset. So, after speaking to him and that quote that he made, how do you think he's going to fit in with this Jets team for 2024?
Well, listen, he's going to fit in great. The question will be whether or not he's healthy. He's coming off the ACL injury that he suffered last year. He said he expects to be ready for week one, and if he can stay on the field, he'll fit in great because he's a tremendous wide receiver. But again, the issue with him always has been whether he can stay healthy. And if he's healthy and if he's on the field, he's going to be very productive for the Jets, but that's what they need him to be. They need him to be healthy.
I mean, they do need him to be healthy. He only appeared in 3 games last year as he tore his ACL, but he told you he thinks he will be ready for week one. And I really like the signing because he's a big body guy. Garrett Wilson now can most likely line up on the inside and feel comfortable in his own skill set. And I think both of them bring different skill sets to the table. And that's what I think is special about that 1-2 punch. But let's move on to recently what the quote that team owner Woody Johnson recently made at the league's annual owners meetings in Orlando. He told Brian Costello of the New York Post, quote, no, we are not just going to release Zach. If we can't trade him, we are going to keep him. And, that's interesting because general manager Joe Douglas said at the NFL Combine that the organization was going to give him permission to seek a trade. So do you see any chance that Zach is back in the green and white for 2024?
No, I think they'll move on from him. I think at some point this offseason he'll be traded. I don't know whether that'll be today, tomorrow, next week, or next month. But at some point I expect that they're going to move Zach Wilson because they know that chapter is basically past and it's time to move on. He wants to move on. They want to move on. It's just a question of when they can find the value and find a team that's willing to pay some of the $4.2 million that's owed to him. But I do not expect that Zach would be back in New York this upcoming season.
So now you mentioned you think they'll trade him. What do you think we're looking at best right now? Is it a 7th? I mean, Justin Fields just went for a conditional 6. Do you think it's a 7? Do you think it's a 6? I can't see them getting a 5 for him. I think it's either a 7 or 6. What about you?
Well, it'll be something in that range, a 7. It'll be a pick flop, switching rounds. It'll be something to that effect, Connor. They're not going to get very much. Justin Fields, as you mentioned, went for a conditional 6th. I think Mac Jones went for 1 pick. I think it was a 6th. Zach Wilson hasn't outplayed either one of those quarterbacks in my mind. So at best, it's a 7, and more likely it could be a pick flop.
So you could see a scenario where the Jets would have to give up Zach Wilson and a pick to get
back. Yes.
To get back a pick?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously his trade market, I got a notification from Bleacher Report the other day that it's, quote, dwindling. So that's really interesting. Woody Johnson said if they're not going to trade him, they're going to keep him. So do you really think there's a possibility if we can't find a trading partner? I know you said you don't see him back in the green and white, but do you think there's a chance he's on this team if we can't find a trade and the other best option is cutting him?
Connor, I expect that they'll be able to trade Zach Wilson. I expect that that'll happen here in the future, whether that's, again, the near future or the distant future. But I expect that at some point before training camp, Zach Wilson will be traded for a minimal amount. And probably it'll be before the draft or during the draft when they can get something back for him at that point in time. But again, I think when the Jets are going to training camp this summer, it would surprise me if Zach Wilson is on that roster.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see any world where he's on this team for 2024. Let's go to the present now. We're in the second wave of free agency right now. Things have kind of died down a little. There still are some names available on this market that I think would fit well with the Jets. Who are some key names still available that you think the Jets are going to look to target?
Well, they lost out on Jadeveon Clowney this week. He went to Carolina. That would have been a nice addition. They still could use somebody who could rush the passer. The problem is there aren't a lot of effective pass rushers out on the market. Look, I think at this point in time, Connor, teams are focused on the draft. And if there's a free agent who's out there who is in the right price range, which most of these guys out there now are, then you look to add him, whether that's at a position that you're deep at or not. If there's a player that wants to come play for the Jets and he wants to come play on a friendly deal, I'm sure they'll entertain that. But the fact of the matter is, teams now are focused in on the draft, and free agency is essentially over.
Yeah, right now, basically things have really died down. Jadeveon Clowney was probably, I think, the biggest signing that we're going to see for a long time. But can you see maybe in the June type of area, maybe adding a J.K. Dobbins type of guy, a Zeke Elliott, someone to play RB2 to help Brees out? As I don't think Izzy Abandokonda can really be an RB2 type of guy. Is there
Why
maybe
not? Why not?
he got minimal reps last season. He was a sixth round pick out of Pitt, and he really didn't get a ton of reps. And when he did, he played great. He did when they gave him reps, but I don't think he's ready to step in that role for 2024. And is there a chance you think maybe they add a Bakhtiari or someone like that to back up Tyron Smith? Can you see them maybe adding Bakhtiari?
Well, Bakhtiari would be a lot of money and it'd be another injury risk. And Bakhtiari would be the kind of guy I would think that they would add if they somehow ran into an issue with one of their tackles. David Bakhtiari has been a great player for a long period of time. But Green Bay moved on from him in part because he couldn't stay healthy and stay on the field. And if you knew that David Bakhtiari were going to be on the field, just like you knew that Tyron Smith were going to be on the field, you'd be happy with either one of those guys. But that's been the question, whether either one can stay on the field. And I think that they have set sail with Tyron Smith. They paid him to stay on the field, so that's where they're going right now. A running back, I think they do like Izzy Abanaconda, and I think that they will count on him this year. It doesn't mean they couldn't add another running back in time, Connor, but I think they feel pretty good about Izzy right now, and we'll see. Look, at some point in time, I think they'll draft another running back, or maybe, to your point, sign another running back. But I think that they feel like they're pretty good at that spot right now, and they probably have more pressing needs.
Yeah, now let's talk about, still staying with the topic of free agency. There are still some names that were with the Jets last year that are free agents now that still aren't with the team right now. You have guys like Connor McGovern, who I think should be back. I think Hardy deserves to be back. I think that special teams unit was nasty. I had Morstead on the show on Wednesday. He really, really wants Hardy back. And maybe it's Ashton Davis. Jordan Whitehead went back to the Bucks. What's a name? Who's a name that they were with the Jets last year, and you think they should be back for 2024?
Well, I like Justin Hardy. I think he's a good player. That would be a nice one. He's played well when he's been out there. He's made plays. Been an effective special teamer. Love to see them bring him back if they could. That would be a name that I would watch for them.
Yeah, now my whole thing is guys that are still not on a team, especially that were with the Jets last year. I think personally it's because they haven't gotten the money they want. I think like you mentioned, Hardy would be great to bring back. I think Connor McGovern as depth would be a great piece to bring back. But staying with the topic of offensive line and continuing to build this and just build the offense in general, let's move up. Let's move to the NFL draft right now. Jets sitting at pick 10. They have a ton of flexibility right now. I don't think they'll trade up, but Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network had the Jets trading up and grabbing Marvin Harrison at pick 5, trading up with the Chargers. I'm right now I'm sitting with team trade down. They still can stay at pick 10 and maybe go after a Fashanu or even a Bowers type of guy. Where do you stand on the Jets' current draft position?
Well, I like the 10 spot. I get no problem with it. I have a hard time imagining that this team would give up more assets to move up in the draft. But if there were a player that they loved and they felt like it was worth it, sure, you could do that. I don't love the idea of that, no matter who it's for, with all the needs that they have. I think it's best for this team to be accumulating draft assets, not unloading them. We'll see how it shakes out. I don't think you could ever go wrong picking offensive line. That seems to be an area still that's deep in this draft that matches up to where the Jets are picking. And they did sign Tyron Smith, but how long is he going to be effective out there? You don't know that. And you can never go wrong with quality offensive linemen. By adding Mike Williams, they have Garrett Wilson. They have some other young receivers. We'll see what they decide to do. But to me, offensive line would be a natural fit at number 10.
So you said you like the 10 spot. Could you see a possibility where you maybe see the Jets trading down to like the Eagles, I think, are a team that might want to come up? Do you think they could trade all the way down to 22?
Connor, it all depends on how the draft unfolds and how much somebody wants to come up. And if there is a quarterback like a J.J. McCarthy available when the Jets pick, that might be something that's very enticing for a team like the Raiders or Vikings or Broncos to move up to go get. So these are hard questions to answer a month out of the draft. You just have to see how it unfolds. I could assure you that the Jets are going to do what's best for them at that spot, whether that's picking a player that they have a high grade on, whether that's moving out of the spot to accumulate more draft capital. It just depends on how it's going. It's hard to answer that right now, not knowing how the first 9 picks are going to fall.
Yeah, I agree. It is hard to answer that right now. But if they were to trade back for 22 to the pick 22, the Eagles have a couple second rounders. Do you think what would it look like? Probably 20. The Jets would acquire 22 and a second round pick for the Eagles to move up to 10.
Well, I think they get more than that to go back from 10 to 22. There's the Jimmy Johnson chart that they would go by. I don't have it in front of me right now to see what the exact point total will be to see how it would equate to picks. But if they were going to go back from 10 to 22, they would get a lot. I would think they get a 1 next year if there were a team willing to do that.
Yeah, Adam, I really appreciate you joining us. Do you have any final thoughts?
Connor, it sounds like you have done a great job with this. It sounds like you love your football team. It sounds like you love podcasting. And I would just tell you to keep working hard and chasing your dreams. And if this is what you love to do, keep doing it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you joining us, everyone. I really appreciate you guys watching. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.